Hello, today we're going to learn about the objects in our solar system. Let's start with a look at a brain pop that covers all of the different objects that are in our solar system.
Hey, Moby, I think I see aliens. Oh, never mind. I think they left. Dear Tim and Moby, can you tell me all about the solar system? From Sam. Well, the solar system is our home in the galaxy. It started out 4.5 billion years ago as a big cloud of gas and dust out in space, mostly hydrogen and helium. Over the course of millions of years, gravity pulled the elements of this dust cloud closer and closer together until clumps began to form. The cloud also began to spin, with the biggest clump in the center. Pressure caused by gravity ignited nuclear reactions at this biggest clump's core, setting it on fire. It became the sun. The smaller clumps became the planets that we know about today. Some of them formed hard hunks of rock called the terrestrial planets. Earth is one of these. Others became big balls of mostly gas called gas giants like Jupiter. Well, the sun is at the center of our solar system. It's actually just a medium-sized star, but for us it's the most important star there is. The 8 planets in our solar system are satellites of the sun. That means they travel around in an orbit. The 4 inner planets are rocky, relatively warm, and have craters. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It looks kind of like our moon, and it has one very hot side and one very cold side. There's no water on Mercury, and there's very little atmosphere. No, you couldn't go there. You'd probably either melt or freeze. Venus is almost the same size as Earth. It's sometimes called Earth's sister planet. The dense carbon dioxide atmosphere on Venus traps so much heat, the surface can get up to over 450 degrees Celsius. Yeah, you'd definitely melt on Venus. Third from the sun is Earth, where we live. It's got just the right conditions for humans, plants, and animals. Mars is called the red planet because of its reddish surface created by the iron in Martian rocks. Mars has 2 moons and the tallest mountain in the solar system, called Olympus Mons. Although it's pretty dry right now, scientists think Mars was once much more like Earth, possibly with oceans and rivers flowing on its surface. 4 outer planets are really far from the sun, so they're much colder. Jupiter is the largest, and one of those gas giants I was mentioning before. It's huge, with a mass 318 times that of Earth. It also has a permanent storm on its surface called the Great Red Spot, which is way bigger than the entire Earth. Saturn is another gas giant, with more than 45 moons orbiting it. You probably know it by its amazing set of rings. The rings are a thin layer of millions of chunks of ice and rock. Uranus is a gassy planet with small gray rings and more than 25 moons. It's tilted so that it looks like it's lying on its side. No one knows exactly why that is, but some scientists think the planet was knocked around during its early days by some other passing body. Neptune is the last gas giant, and it has more than a dozen moons. It was named after the Roman god of the sea, maybe because it's so blue. There's a stormy great dark spot on Neptune that's kind of like the great red spot on Jupiter. Right, the solar system isn't just planets and the sun. There are lots of smaller bodies floating out there too. Asteroids are pieces of rock centimeters to hundreds of kilometers wide that wander the solar system. Most of them are concentrated in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The dwarf planet Pluto, known as a main planet until it was demoted in 2006, is a cold, rocky body, even smaller than our own moon. Pluto has an odd elliptical orbit that sometimes brings it closer to the sun than Neptune. It also has at least 3 moons, Charon, Hydra, and Nix. By the way, Pluto isn't the only dwarf planet. Others include Ceres, the largest object in the asteroid belt, and an object named Eris, which is slightly larger than Pluto. Comets are clumps of ice and dust that orbit the sun. When they get close to the sun, some of their ice forms long, wispy tails that you can sometimes see from Earth. The Kuiper Belt and Oort cloud are areas in the far regions of the solar system where small bodies like comets are thought to originate. I know there's quite a variety of stuff in the solar system, right? What's your favorite thing out there? Yeah, I guess Earth's my favorite too.
So now let's take a look at the objects in our solar system in a little greater detail. So here is all the stuff in our solar system. We have planets, dwarf planets, moons, asteroids, meteors, comets, the asteroid belt, and Kuiper belt objects. First, let's take a look at our planets. The inner planets we call the terrestrial planets, and they include Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. And here's a picture of all of them along with the Earth's moon. This allows you to compare size and then also see a little close-up of their surface. The terrestrial planets have a few similarities. One is that they are rocky and small. They all have solid surfaces. They don't have very many moons, if any at all. Mercury doesn't have any. We know that Earth has one moon. Venus has none, and Mars has 2 moons. And also they have no ring systems at all. Some of the differences are that Mercury is airless and barren. Mars has a very thin atmosphere. Earth has oxygen, water, and life. And Venus has a very, very thick atmosphere and is very hot due to the runaway greenhouse effect. Their internal structure, they all have a core, which is a high-density metal. They all have a mantle, and they all have a crust. And they have some similar surface features as well. These are the following processes that shape the surfaces of the terrestrial planets. They all show impact cratering to different degrees, volcanism, tectonics, and erosion. Now, not all planets show all 4 of these things. Earth is the only one that has all 4 of these, but all 4 have impact cratering. We know that the Earth has volcanism, and the other planets show a history of volcanism. The Earth is the only planet with plate tectonics and erosion happening currently. The Jovian planets are what we call the 4 outer planets, and we call them Jovian because that means like Jupiter, and they are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And here's a picture of them along with their sizes. Some of the similarities is that they all have deep, massive atmospheres. There's no solid surface. They are all very large, much larger than the terrestrial planets. They're made mostly of gases, and they all have ring systems. And they have many, many moons each. Here are some of the differences in the Jovian planets. Jupiter and Saturn are much larger than Uranus and Neptune. Saturn has a very extensive ring system, and Uranus is tipped on its side. Now let's take a look at the category that we call dwarf planets. The International Astronomical Union decided on a new planet definition in 2006. So a planet is now considered a celestial body that 1 is in orbit around the Sun, 2 has sufficient mass for its gravity to pull itself into a nearly round shape, and thirdly, it has to have cleared its neighborhood around its orbit. The current dwarf planets are Pluto, Eris, Ceres, Haumea, and Makemake. Our next category of objects are moons, and there are quite a few moons in our solar system. We also call these satellites because they orbit another object. There are 146 named moons in our solar system as of today, and most of them orbit the Jovian planets. Only 3 of them orbit the terrestrial planets. And most of them are named for mythological characters. There's some other small stuff in our solar system. Asteroids, which are rocky, airless bodies that orbit the Sun. They are too small to be spherical, so they kind of look like big, huge boulders out in space. And most of them are located in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Meteoroids are another category of small stuff. These are little chunks of rock and debris, and once they enter into our atmosphere and we see them as bright streaks of light, we call them meteors. And then the third category of small stuff is comets. Comets are cosmic snowballs of frozen gases, and they're actually about the size of a small town, so they're probably a little bigger than you imagine. Here's a picture of an asteroid, a meteoroid, and a comet. The Kuiper belt might be a part of the solar system that you don't know a lot about. It's a disc-shaped region beyond Neptune's orbit. It's where Pluto is located, and it's full of icy objects, billions of miles from the Sun. Pluto and Eris are both found in the Kuiper belt, and there possibly are hundreds of others. Let's watch another brain pop on some of these objects in our outer solar system.
Ooh, I think I see Neptune. Well, give me that. Dear Tim and Moby, is there really such a thing as Planet X? Your friend, Charlotte. Well, not really. Planet X was the name given for a theoretical planet some astronomers thought existed beyond the orbit of Neptune. But their hypothesis was based on faulty calculations of Neptune's mass. So the search for Planet X was kind of pointless. Okay, not completely pointless. For a while, Pluto was thought to be the missing planet. But Pluto wasn't massive enough to fit the estimates of Planet X's probable size. Today, people just use the term Planet X to mean some undiscovered major planet of the solar system. But, there probably won't be any more planets found. But there are tons of other objects that keep popping up in the far regions of the solar system. Well, I'll tell you. First of all, anything that orbits the Sun farther than the planet Neptune is called a trans-Neptunian object. There are more than 1,000 trans-Neptunian objects in the solar system, and counting. Well, the most well-known is Pluto, which was recently reclassified as a dwarf planet. Dwarf planets are kind of like regular planets, but generally smaller. Yep, Pluto is also a Kuiper belt object. The Kuiper belt is a ring of icy debris orbiting the Sun beyond Neptune. Scientists think this stuff has stayed pretty unchanged from the time the solar system first formed, about 4.5 billion years ago. Pluto's moons, Charon, Hydra, and Nix, are also Kuiper belt objects. Other large Kuiper bodies include Orcus, Quaoar, and Varuna. Farther out from the Kuiper belt is an area called the scattered disk. Scientists say scattered disk objects are, Kuiper belt rejects. They've literally been thrown out. One of these is a dwarf planet called Eris. Eris is actually the largest dwarf planet in the solar system. It's just a bit bigger than Pluto. Sedna, another large scattered disk object, hasn't been fully categorized yet. They say it's one of the reddest bodies in the solar system, maybe even redder than Mars. Well, planetary scientists aren't sure whether Sedna is one of the farthest scattered disk objects or part of another region, the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is a whole light year away from the Sun. It takes an entire year for a ray of sunshine to reach it. It's by far the most distant known region of the solar system. The Oort cloud is thought to be made of billions of small objects, mostly comets. Like the stuff in the Kuiper belt, objects in the Oort cloud are thought to have originated way back when the solar system was just starting up. Oh, the things I mentioned are all governed by the Sun's gravity, which stretches halfway to the next star system. But other important parts of the solar system are governed by the solar wind, a flow of charged particles produced by the Sun. For example, the termination shock is a boundary area where the particles of the solar wind slow way down. After that is the heliopause. That's where the solar wind gets stopped in its tracks by particles from the rest of outer space. The farthest that humans have ever gone is the Moon, but several spacecraft have been to the outer regions of the solar system. It's been really hard to keep track of these guys, since the signals they emit are so weak and so far away now. But scientists are pretty sure that both of the Voyager probes have passed the termination shock and are closing in on the heliopause. Yeah, they've been traveling in space for about 35 years now. The Pioneer 10 and 11 probes have been out there even longer. They launched in the early 1970s and are also thought to be nearing the heliopause. Man, I wonder what it must feel like to be so far from home. You know what it's like out there? Well, how do you know? When were you there? Are there others like you? Whoa.
So that's it for your overview on all of the stuff in our solar system, and we'll be talking about all of this stuff in more detail throughout the rest of the semester.